Well, this is a big day, everybody. So, either one of two things is going on in your personal life. Number one, either you are in the playoffs right now, your playoffs started week 14. By the way, if that is the case, please move it to week 15 next year. Week 14 playoff start is a stupid time to play playoffs. And number two is that either, if that's not the case, you're heading into your playoffs next week. So you're either in by now, or you need something to happen, or you're just trying to play spoiler for somebody else. Whatever the case is, we are definitely in dire straits right now. We are in crunch time, and everything needs to be perfect from a fantasy perspective. So we've got a lot of questions to answer today, I'm sure. And there's going to be a lot of interesting discussions. There's a lot of injuries that are affecting a lot of positions. We've got Amari and Hampton coming back at the running back position tomorrow night for the Los Angeles Chargers. We've also got DJ Moore potentially stepping into a bigger role today. Luther Burden, Olamide Zaccheaus with Rome Odunze out. We've got Jaden Reed coming back into the lineup. There's a lot of things going on here. Michael Wilson included. There's so much that we need to go through today before we get into week 14. And we're going to make sure we get as many questions answered today as possible. Just make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you appreciate what I'm doing. And also, go post a poll, a start-sit poll on fsroundup.com. It is the quickest and easiest way to get your question answered immediately by the rest of the community on what you should do with a start-sit decision. So, good to see everybody in here today. Alexis Bolanos, good to see you in here. K9, C-Rod, or Jaden Higgins start one. So I'll go ahead and bench Rodriguez because I do think that just from the split backfield perspective and just from the perspective of matchup, I don't think it's that strong today. You look at Kenneth's matchup, and it is a stronger one against the Atlanta Falcons. It's in a dome. Not that that particularly matters for the ground game, but I do think that the Falcons is a better matchup than the Vikings are. And I would say that he has just more explosive capability. I think when you kind of look at the upside of Rodriguez versus Kenneth Walker, it's not I would say Kenneth's is higher because he has the big play ability to get in the end zone as well. So I would say his upside is somewhere in the range of 16 to 18 points, while Rodriguez is 12 points. So I think from that perspective, K9's a better play. I would also consider Higgins to be a better play than Chris Rodriguez. Although they're closer, my philosophy is on Jaden Higgins. He's a good play in certain situations. I don't think he has the upside of Kenneth Walker. I think Kenneth's upside still is higher because, like I said, I think you get 16 to 18 points as an upside play, but Kenneth's floor is basically around Higgins' ceiling. I think Higgins' ceiling is probably 12 to 13 points, and I would say Kenneth's floor is 10 points. So I do think Kenneth is a better play than all those guys. Appreciate the super chat. Richard Ellis, good to see you in here. Flex 1, full PPR. Burden, Gadsden, Waller, or Loveland. Okay, I'll play Waller over Loveland, and I'd play Waller over Gadsden as well. I actually, funny enough, just before I got live, I was helping my wife out with her lineup, and I was kind of having this debate the whole week. Do I play Gadsden or do I play Waller in her lineup? And I settled on Waller because of the fact that he's got the touchdown upside that I don't really feel like Gadsden has had lately. And I think he's going in the wrong direction while Waller is trending positively. So Waller is my tight end play. Now, does it come to the point where I would play him over a wide receiver without the wide receiver one there? Because if you don't know, Rome Odunze is out today. So everybody, including Luther Burden, has moved up in my rankings this week. And those of you with a premium subscription on our site, you know exactly where Luther Burden is ranked this morning. He moved up. So to me, here's my thing. When it comes to a guy like Waller, you have to factor in that he's a red zone threat. So a touchdown is not a given every week. You didn't get one last week, but the possibility of a touchdown is very strong compared to other tight ends. So you do have that to look forward to. you also have to factor in the lower volume because, I mean, Waller last week, he got like 2 or 3 targets. So that's not out of the norm. Like Waller, if you look at his game log this year, that's basically been what his story has been all year. So I do think of Waller as a solid tight end play, but I would play the wide receiver because I believe that the matchup today, while not great, Chicago has been moving the ball very well. They've been wanting to get Luther Burden more involved as is, and I think his ceiling is higher. I think you look back to the week where he had like a 25-point explosion. Yes, it was on a big play, but that's what they want out of Luther Burden. And you add in a couple more targets on top of that as well without Roma Dunze, and I do think of Luther Burden as a really good flex play this week. So for me, I'm going to go with Luther Burden. Appreciate the super chat. All right, let's go up to the top here. Todd D'Ambrosio, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here. Baker, Burrow, or Brissett? To me, I've said this a lot this week. I think of Burrow as a very high-end play. I got asked a bunch of times on the quarterback ranking video, and I didn't do a good enough job explaining this in the video at the time. But essentially what it comes down to is I was asked a lot, does the weather today have any impact? And, you know, we'll check the weather report right now. But last thing I saw was that this Bills-Bengals game was supposed to be pretty snowy. So let's double check it really quick. So Bills-Bengals. Is this the same article? Okay. Okay, can I get a straight freaking answer? I mean, it's like, where is the weather? Okay, chances of precipitation is high, 90%. While the forecast calls for cloudy skies, high near the freezing mark, and calm wind from the southeast. 1 to 3 inches of snow is possible. So it's going to be a snowy game. So I got asked a bunch, you know, how does this impact the quarterbacks? And I said, not much at all. Because Burrow and Allen are both used to this. Like, they both play in cold weather environments that get like this during this time of the year. And they've both proven time and time and again the ability to play in that weather. So for me, Burrow doesn't move in my rankings. He's still a top 2 quarterback for me. So Burrow, to me, is the play. Like, Brissett, I would play over Baker at this point, and people were questioning, well, did you leave Baker out on accident if you're top 16 this week? And I said, no, it wasn't an accident. Like, you look at Baker's game log, it has not been good. So I really do think that it's an interesting perspective to look at when you look at this weather game. I don't view it as a big deal. I mean, if you were asking me about Tua in this weather, I would say bench Tua, you know, but Burrow is not in that category. So I'm playing Burrow personally. Armando Chavez, what's going on? Strange or Ertz? I will personally play, man, that's actually really close. The thing with Ertz for me moving forward is that with Jaden Daniels back, I always considered Ertz to be a better play with Jaden Daniels because that's kind of Jaden Daniels' safety blanket right there. He became such a safety blanket for Mariota, too. Ertz is just still a good player. Like, he's still just a good player with touchdown upside. When you look at Brenton Strange, his first 2 games back, he's done well on a per-target basis, but also at the same time, he's not getting as much work as Ertz is on a weekly basis. So Ertz, to me, from the target perspective and from the red zone perspective, I think is the better play. Nathan Hilton, good to see you in here, man. Luther Burden or RJ Harvey, Alec Pierce or Dallas Goedert. So Luther Burden, like I said, definitely has risen up my rankings quite a bit this week. I do think of him as a really good play. And I know you're a Bears fan, Nathan. So, you know, there's probably incentive for you to play a guy like Luther Burden. And I don't think it's a problem. I will say this with RJ Harvey is that RJ in the matchup today versus the Raiders, you know, one thing we really gleaned from last week was that I kind of predicted heading into last week against the Washington Commanders that against an inferior opponent, Denver and Sean Payton would probably go about trying to, get some confidence instilled in RJ Harvey for the playoffs. And so I said, look out for a potential, multiple touchdown game from RJ Harvey. And he did just that. This kind of feels like one of those things again where it's like lesser opponent. Let's continue to get our young guys some confidence here. And let's put him back out there quite a bit because we've been able to glean. Like, he is the lead back while there still is involvement in the passing game from a guy like Tyler Bidet, while there still is a possible red zone threat and a short yardage threat of a guy like Jaleel McLaughlin. It is RJ Harvey who's taking the majority, and his matchup is better than Luther Burden's today. So I like Luther Burden, but I'm not putting him over a guy like RJ Harvey for me. So I'd play RJ Harvey. Alec Pierce or Dallas Goedert. I think that when it comes to Goddard, we've gotten to a place over the last several weeks where it's really destabilized for him. And I would even argue that his production has been pretty destabilized all year while it was good. I mean, the problem with Philly is that they've got all these weapons and every week someone's going to get left out. So there's been more of a push lately to get A.J. Brown the ball. Well, that's at the direct downfall of Dallas Goedert. So I do think of Dallas Goedert as a worse off play than he was like a month or a month and a half ago. So Alec Pierce, on the other hand, has done nothing but get better as a play. Like he's just, it's not just the big plays. Like, he has been involved and relevant in their game plan on a weekly basis. Like, when you look at his snap counts, when you look at his routes run, when you look at his targets, like, they're not just all deep shots. Like, he's getting, he had a 2-target game against the Chiefs in week 12. But outside of that, Alec Pierce has been very involved in this offense's weekly game plan. So I do think of Alec Pierce as a really good play. And I would play Alec Pierce over the tight end. So I'll play Alec Pierce over Goddard. Appreciate the super chat, man. Good to see you in here. Demetrios, good to see you, man. Always good to see you. Olave or Flowers, Kincaid or Strange. If Olave plays today, I'm playing him. Now let's double check this really quick. Olave should be playing, but let's double check. Chris Olave. Yeah, they're expecting him to be there. He's active. So, yeah, I think Olave for me is the better play. Like, if you just factor in what Olave has done, and mind you, like, last week he was also dealing with his back injury. It actually was a problem last week on their injury report, and he just played through it. And if you just look at the guy's target totals, if you just look at what he's done on the year-long perspective, he's been a very, very consistent piece in their passing offense. So it kind of feels a little wild to me to bench him for a guy who has just been so low ceiling lately. And while the floor has actually been pretty solid outside of last week for Zay Flowers, I don't think of him as the same level. Like, yes, he's got a really good matchup today, but Olave does too. I mean, Tampa Bay's defense from the passing perspective has not done well. So I don't think of Olave as this bad matchup play. The only problem with him is that injury, but he was dealing with it last week and he still came away with about 15 points. Zay, like, you're going to get, it feels like at most like 12 points from Zay, and that's fine. But when I've got a guy who could give me 20, I'm just not going to play the guy who I feel like my best case scenario is 12. So I feel like Zay is not on the same level as Olave. Now, so I'll play Olave over Zay. Now, Kincaid or Strange, if Kincaid is active, let's see the report on him, because he's active. Okay, that's great. So Dalton Kincaid is active today. That's a big deal. And the way I put this one earlier in the week, I said, listen, when it comes to Kincaid, he is going to be their most stable wide receiver upon arrival because of the fact that Buffalo has not been able to get stability from Khalil Shakir, who in theory should be their most stable provider as far as pass catcher, especially when Dalton Kincaid is out. That hasn't been the case, and this is a great matchup to take advantage of, whether you're a wide receiver, whether you're a tight end, whether you're a running back. So in this Cincy matchup today, Dalton Kincaid, to me, feels like a very high upside play. Like, he can get you 20 plus. Brenton Strange, I do think, is a guy that can get you 14 points, but I don't view him as a 20-point guy. Like, I think that Brenton Strange, based on target share, lower floor, based on efficiency, higher ceiling with the lower targets. But my point being is that I think Kincaid probably has more upside in this kind of matchup than Brenton Strange does in his kind of matchup versus Indy. And also when you factor in the target share. Like, Kincaid can get 6 to 7 targets and be really good on a per target perspective, just like Brenton Strange can, while Brenton Strange's best case scenario is probably giving you 4 targets. So I'm going to go with Kincaid over Brenton Strange. Appreciate the super chat, man. Good to see you. Okay, next up we have Matt Donovan. Good to see you in here. Who should I sit for Wilson? Egbuka, Smith, or McConkey? So, for those of you who don't know, I called Michael Wilson a must-start guy without Marvin Harrison Jr. If you just look at the game log with Marvin, or without Marvin, for Michael Wilson, it's been pretty phenomenal. So, I consider him definitely a must-start guy. Now, when it comes to who to sit him for, a guy like Egbuka really does scare me. I will say, like, he's ranked behind Devonta Smith. And the way I look at both these two is relatively similar. I would say that their ceilings are both really high, right? Like, I think that Devonta and Egbuka could give you 25, but I also think that Egbuka's floor is probably around like 5 points at this point. Devonta's is maybe like 3. Now, I would say that when it's that close, right, we got to split hairs. I think Devonta's floor is really low, but I also think Egbuka's is maybe a point or two higher of a floor. So then let's look at the ceilings again. Well, Devonta's best game this year has been around 30 points. Egbuka, like, he's done really well, but it's going in the wrong direction, and he hasn't really posted a 25-point game in like a month. So it's been a long, long time. So I don't view Egbuka as like a must start anymore. And him and Devonta Smith are so closely ranked. Like, if we line these guys up in the comparison feature right now, you're going to see how closely ranked they are. And I've got Emeka Egbuka a little bit behind Devonta Smith. Now, the comparison feature likes Egbuka over Devonta Smith. I like Devonta Smith. But it's that close. 32 is Egbuka's ranking, and 30 is Devonta Smith. So it's close enough to be a gut call. But for me personally, I'm going to play Devonta over Egbuka. And then Ladd, I would also play over Egbuka as well. So to me, I'm going to go ahead and play Michael Wilson, Devonta Smith, and Ladd. Because I think with Ladd and Michael Wilson, you're going to get a safe floor with a higher ceiling. And then Devonta could give you a 30-point ceiling. So this could be a potentially 90 points combined with all these players. If Michael Wilson hits 30, if Devonta hits 30, and if Ladd were to hit maybe not 90, maybe like 80, if Ladd could hit like 20. So I'll personally do that. Appreciate the super chat, man. Top Gun Dolphins, what's going on? Good to see you in here. So sit 2. Bo Nix, Jordan Love, Luther Burden, Christian Watson, and Debo. So this appears to be a super flex type of situation. And Bo and Jordan Love, they're actually, like, how I view them for the rest of the season, including playoffs, is very similar. But I actually think of Love as actually a low-key good play this week. Just when I did my quarterback rankings, I looked at Love in the matchup versus the Bears, who have been injured on the back end of that defense and susceptible on the back end of that defense. And I thought to myself, I'd rather take the shot on him over someone like Mahomes, who's playing Houston this week. Like, we know that Houston has been dominant against quarterbacks, and so I don't see Mahomes getting more than an 18-point game. I think Love can give you 25 plus today. So I view him as a better play than Bo, because Bo is the most wildly unpredictable guy, and he can give you big weeks. But a lot of times, you can't even look at a matchup with Bo Nix and predict how it's going to go. The difference between him and Love is that Love, while yes, inconsistent, is more predictable than Bo Nix. You can look at Jordan Love's game log this year, and against good matchups in the green. Like if you were to look at it from a sleeper perspective, from an ESPN perspective, from a Yahoo perspective, the good matchups are always in green. Jordan Love, when he plays green matchups, typically it's predictable for a good game for Jordan Love. This is a green matchup. I would play Jordan Love over Bo Nix. I don't have a problem sitting Bo Nix for a guy like Christian Watson. I would probably play Bo Nix over a guy like Luther Burden and Debo, because I do think that just having a quarterback in is probably something I would take the shot on more often than a couple of guys that I view have lower floors. Like, I don't think Bo is going to give you less than 10 points this week, right? Whereas with Debo and with Luther Burden, I think their floors are probably in the 6-point range. So I would personally take Bo Nix and Jordan Love, but I would play Watson over Bo Nix. So I would play that Love and Watson stack, and then I would go ahead and sit Luther Burden and Debo Samuel. So those are the two guys that I would sit. Appreciate the super chat. Ty from Wyoming. Good to see you in Wyoming. Justin Jefferson or Jacoby Myers or Alec Pierce. Full PPR. That's a real tester, man. It's funny because I'm fairly certain that these guys are pretty much back-to-back ranked. Jacoby Myers and Justin Jefferson, I think that Justin Jefferson is one spot over Jacoby Myers, but we'll check. So Jacoby Myers actually is 6 spots over JJ. That's good, because I was about to say Jacoby Myers, I'm going to play him over Justin Jefferson. I just think that when you look at Justin Jefferson and you look at the game log, it's done nothing but go backwards recently. And that's typically the thing about fantasy you have to keep in mind, is that we're at the point in the year where not only are fantasy managers giving up, NFL teams are giving up as well. So, you've got these guys in Minnesota who have just seen nothing but garbage at quarterback. They're ready for a vacation. They're ready to just say, 1, 2, 3, Cancun, let's get the hell out of Dodge. And I think that's where you're at with Minnesota's options. So, yeah, in theory, the matchup is better today for Minnesota versus Washington, but that doesn't mean that it's going to all of a sudden be a good play for Justin Jefferson when he's got J.J. McCarthy as his quarterback. Jacoby Myers, in a short period of time, has just looked better with Trevor Lawrence than Justin Jefferson has with J.J. McCarthy. So I'll play Jacoby Myers over J.J. When it comes to Alec Pierce, I'll go ahead and play Myers over Alec Pierce as well. They're both in competitive atmospheres as far as targets go. But like I said, one thing that's really striking to me, and as I look at the comparison feature, it also likes Jacoby Myers. He's 12 spots ranked higher than Alec Pierce. One thing that was striking to me when I was looking at Jacoby Myers last week in particular is that with Brian Thomas Jr. back in the fold, him and Trevor Lawrence just continue to build their chemistry together. So you have to kind of look at him as their wide receiver one. And I would say that the matchup is better for Jacksonville because Indy's got a banged-up secondary. Obviously, with a banged-up Sauce Gardner, and they've already got Ward, who's been out for a while, and their secondary and their whole defense is looking worse. Jacksonville's secondary is the strength of that defense. So I personally think of Jacoby Myers as the best play of the bunch. Appreciate the super chat. Jeremy Balak, what's going on? Need 2 in a double flex, full PPR. Hampton Vidal stack, or just 1. Michael Carter, Judy, Pat Bryant, Mooney, and P. Ryan. Also Chiefs or Dolphins defense. Yeah, it's funny. I think of the Dolphins defense as a solid play this week. You'd have to be a little crazy not to consider them a solid play, considering they're taking on the Jets. But one thing I've been very clear on is that I actually might put some money on the Jets to win today because the Jets are playing at home field against Tua and the Dolphins, who are not good in cold weather. And I think when you look at the Dolphins defense, one thing that I've been pointing out all year is that The Dolphins, in order for them to be a good defensive play, is they have to hold teams to very few points because they're not generating many turnovers. Like, their sack number is pretty low as well. Their turnover margin is not very good. So you kind of have to factor those things in. That being said, the Jets, obviously, you can't count on them to put up 27 points against the Falcons last week. That's high. And I don't think they'll do that again. So I do think of the Dolphins as the better play because the Chiefs, while they will get some sacks on CJ Stroud, I don't feel like their defense has had enough playmakers either. So I think that the Texans' offense is better than the Jets. And so I think they're both close enough to where it could be a gut call. But for me, I'm going to go with the Dolphins' defense. Hampton and Vidal stack, I'll be honest, I don't want to play both of them. Like, I think playing both of them is ill-advised, in my opinion. I don't think they would give you that much upside. That being said, like, your pool of options here is limited. So we'll keep that in mind. But one of them for sure is going to get played. At least one of them. So you could kind of slot in Hampton or Vidal for now. Michael Carter, I would play both of those guys over Jerry Jeudy. I would probably end up playing Jeudy over Kamani Vidal because of the fact that I think there still is a big play threat to a guy like Jerry Jeudy. But his floor, I would say, is probably around the same as Vidal's, which is like 4 points this week. So I would say that Jeudy would be a guy I would put in over Vidal. Pat Bryant is definitely not far off either. I said this yesterday. Pat Bryant is going to be a guy that you need to watch moving forward. And I'm talking to everybody right now. You need to watch Pat Bryant because he is increasing in his snap count. He's increasing in his routes run on a weekly basis. It's lining up for him. Would I play him over Jeudy yet? Probably not, because I do think Jeudy has, again, the bigger play upside, and he's probably a little more important in his offense right now. Mooney feels like a better play than both of them. I don't love Mooney. We've seen a lot of bad from Kirk Cousins and from Mooney this year, but I do think he's probably the one I would play. But would I play him over Vidal? Hampton's going in. Hampton is definitely going in. The playing the stack of those two just feels so ill-advised. They both do not have. I mean, collectively, they may give you 20 points or something like that, but I think that Hampton will be the lead back tomorrow, and it just feels a little wild to play them both. I don't know. I'm tossing this one up in my head. I think they both combined could give you 20. Hampton, I don't think, is going to isolate himself as the lead back. So if Mooney doesn't hit, they could give you like 10 points. I kind of feel like I would play that stack. The Hampton Vidal stack, I would not do this in most situations. Like if you've got Michael Wilson as an option, I would not do that. If you've got somebody like Christian Watson, Deebo Samuel, Romeo Dobbs, those are guys, DJ Moore, I would not play that stack over those types of guys. But considering your pool of options here, I am going to play that Los Angeles stack. Appreciate the super chat. Twisted Folk, good to see you in here. Half PPR, RB2, Corum or Carter, both are likely. Both are likely throw up. Yeah, no, I see what you're saying. Corum or Carter, listen, my perspective on the Los Angeles Rams backfield is that I said this like a week or two ago at this point. I did a lot of research in the offseason about running backs who had 350-plus touch seasons and what the following season looks like for them. 100% of them lose volume, right? So, like, you look at a guy like Kyron, and he had 350-plus touches in 2024. So this year, he's not going to get that. And I think a big reason is because they know the history is that if you keep that same volume or you increase it, oftentimes they get injured. And probably there's an element to them wanting to save him for the playoffs as well. So I think of Corum as a actually relatively like not high-end flex, but in the world of backup running backs, I think Corum is definitely up there with like Tyler Algier as far as good plays that could sneak in the end zone. Michael Carter, to me, in that same matchup, playing a much tougher defense, and I don't view him as a guy that could like sneak into the end zone as likely because Bam Knight has done well. So I would personally play Corum. Like, I think Corum, for me, is a guy that when you look at the efficiency, when you look at the volume trends, when you're looking at the goal line usage, he's more likely to get in the end zone than I think Carter is. So I'm going to go ahead and play Corum. Appreciate the super chat. Zach Stubblefield, what's going on? Tight end Stranger, Waller, flex, Bam, Burden, or Adonai Mitchell. Like I said, I think I answered this one earlier. I'm going to play Waller over Brenton Strange because I like the touchdown upside. And I don't think that it's as likely to get that from Brenton Strange. Now, the other perspective on this one is that you kind of look at these guys from the volume perspective, and what we've seen with Brenton Strange has been minimal volume since he's been back, right? Like, he got 4 targets last week, and then he got 5 targets the week prior, which is okay considering that he was efficient on his work these past 2 weeks. But then when you look at Darren Waller last week, right? Like, Darren Waller gets almost the same level of volume, 3 targets last week, but he's down the field for them, and he's a red zone threat. He is their best red zone weapon. So I just think of Waller as a higher upside play. I'll go ahead and play Darren Waller. Flex Bam Burden or Adonai Mitchell. You know, it's funny. I think if you asked me this question on, let's say, Wednesday, I would have said to you that I think Adonai Mitchell would be a better play than Luther Burden. But things happen, right? And with Roma Dunze being ruled out, a guy like Luther Burden rises up my rankings because he's on a better offense. And I just trust that more than with Adonai Mitchell. I do think that that perspective is just, you kind of have to just kind of look at it and say to yourself, do you trust Tyrod Taylor to do this on a weekly basis? And do you trust Adonai Mitchell too? Because I don't yet. While also acknowledging he's a relatively higher end flex in my rankings this week. I will say this. I do think that Bam is a fine play, but he's not really going to be like a coveted flex. Like, I think if you're in desperate need of an RB2, I'm playing Bam Knight this week in one of my own personal leagues. So I don't have a problem with playing Bam necessarily, but I would personally play Luther Burden over Bam Knight. And again, I'd play Luther over Adonai Mitchell because I just think that Chicago and Green Bay are going to be locked in a close matchup today. And if you don't think that and you'd rather listen to the Vegas odds on this one, well, Vegas has Green Bay as a 7-point favorite today. Like, that's crazy to think about that. Green Bay, like, it's insane. So I do think that personally, Luther Burden to me is, whether you look at it from my perspective or Vegas's, they're going to be throwing the ball. And Luther Burden is a guy they've already wanted to get involved. So now without Rome, I think he's important shoots up. So I'd play Luther Burden in that situation. Appreciate the super chat. G Medina, good to see you in here. Half PPR, Higgins in the snow, or Watson or McLaurin. So here's my opinion on this, is that I've said it a couple times over the last like 24 hours. I don't care about the snow when it comes to the Bengals or the Bills. Like, they're both led by quarterbacks who play in this kind of weather every December. Like, Cincinnati is a snowy, rainy, cold weather place. Buffalo, same thing. So, like, I don't ever get worried about these two teams in inclement weather when they play in this and they practice in this at this time of the year every year. And they've got strong arm quarterbacks. So, like, Higgins to me is a really high upside play. Now, I will say this. With I will play Higgins over Watson, but with Terry, I would say that they're close enough in my rankings to where if you worry about the snow aspect, then I would just go ahead and play Terry. If it was my team, I probably would play T. Higgins over Terry because I see more upside in the matchup. When you think about Terry, he's taking on a defense that did shut down Jackson Smith-Njigba last week. And I do think of Washington as still this unstable team. With Joe Burrow back, the upside is so huge. So if it was me, I would play T. But like I said, I think that T and Terry are particularly close enough in my rankings to where I could see justifying and saying, you know what, I'd rather just avoid the weather matchup. I'd rather play Terry. That's totally fine. So it's a gut call. If it's me, though, I'm going to play T. Higgins. Appreciate the super chat. Demetrios, good to see you again. Pick one for kicker. McPherson, Loop, or Group? That's a good question. So earlier in the week, I had McPherson ranked as a top 4 or 5 kicker, I think. And so here's my thought on it now. Knowing what we know about the weather this week, I've been saying this throughout the whole live stream. I don't worry from the offensive perspective in fantasy. Now, from a kicker's perspective, it's a little different because McPherson has struggled with accuracy in recent years, especially in inclement weather. So I do think that I have to kind of mitigate that a little bit with Tyler Loop, for example. He's a guy that I've always viewed Tyler Loop as the type of guy that in this kind of matchup against Pittsburgh, it's going to be a field goal fest. I do think that Baltimore will win, but if you look at previous Steelers and Ravens games, they're usually decided by a field goal. So I do think the kickers will have a lot of involvement today. So I would rather play Loop than McPherson. And with Blake Group, I've always had an issue with his accuracy as well. So I do think personally that Group, I would rather just sit him down and kind of see how he performs in his first week in Indianapolis. So I think that personally I would go with Tyler Loop. Appreciate the super chat. Joe Avita, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Start 2. Watson, Myers, Sutton, and quarterback Baker or Brissett. Watson, Myers, or Sutton. I think that Myers and Watson are going in because, listen, the only thing that could possibly get interesting today, and I do think it will get interesting, it's this one, the Chicago and Green Bay matchup, I personally view as a pivotal matchup to watch from a wide receiver's perspective in fantasy. These two teams have major shakeups. Rome Odunze may miss multiple weeks, so look at how their position group handles that. And Jaden Reed coming back off the injury, he's historically been their most productive wide receiver from a fantasy perspective and from a team perspective. So you wonder how that affects Watson. Now, here's my thing with Watson, though, is that I don't think, number one, that in Jaden Reed's first game back, he's going to get targeted 6 or 7 times. I think that he'll get targeted 2 to 4 times, and so therefore, I don't worry about Watson as much. Now, if you look at Watson in his previous weeks, his floor has really stabilized to a point where I feel we can trust him as not just this big play threat who can give you 25 points because he can, but I would say that his floor has become safe to a point where I feel like I can rely on him over a guy like Sutton. So, you look at Sutton, he's going to give you blank weeks. He's going to give you 2-point weeks or 3-point weeks. That's not really the case with Watson anymore, man. Like, Watson has become an important piece. He's got a great matchup today, and Sutton I just don't trust. So I would rather take out the uncertainty with Sutton while acknowledging that he's got a similar ceiling to Watson. I think Watson's floor has become a lot more stable. So I'd rather take the floor with Watson when I get the same level of upside-ish, maybe even higher with Watson. And then with Myers, like I said, I think his floor-ceiling combo has really stabilized to a very comfortable point. So I would personally play Watson and Jacoby Myers. And then Baker and Brissett. Once again, my opinion on Baker is I think that it's not the same as last year. And people just need to kind of acknowledge that. You know, Baker has kind of become like a massive name. And Baker has really evolved into this quarterback that, like, people just kind of automatically want to play. But, like, if you just get honest with yourself for a minute, look at Baker's game log. 14 points in Week 13. Week 12, 5 points. Week 11, 19 points, which is solid. 22 points in Week 10. Week 9 was their bye week. 6 points in Week 8. 12 points in Week 7. Like, Baker is not consistent. And just based on that sample size right there, he's got a ceiling of about 24 points, which is good. But if you're not hitting that relatively consistently, or even just solidifying your floor to like 18 or 17 points, I can't justify playing you over a guy like Brissett, who has done nothing but have good games. And there's been tough matchups mixed in there. Like, the problem with the matchup today is it's really tough for Brissett, but like, he's played tough matchups and still done this, right? Like, the Jags defense was not an easy play, and he still put up 18 points. The 49ers defense, he only put 22 points on the board and had 23 points. The Seahawks defense, that's the toughest defense in the NFL, and he put up 21 points in fantasy. So, like, matchup with this guy is not a problem anymore. So I don't worry about his matchups. I'm playing Jacoby Brissett. I'll take that floor and ceiling combo because it's basically the same. You get, at worst, 18 points, and at most, you can get 23 to 24. That's better than Baker. I'll play Jacoby Brissett. Appreciate the super chat. Lawrence Poliagas, what's going on? Good to see you in here, my friend. 10-man full PPR. Quarterback, Burrow or Mahomes. Tight end, Brenton Strange or Loveland. Flex, Justin Jefferson, RJ Harvey, or Terry McLaurin. So here's the thing. With the quarterbacks, it's a really easy answer for me. Because, yes, I get it. Joe Burrow is in bad weather today, and Mahomes has done mostly well. And there's an element of a lack of trust with Burrow because he's only been back for one game. But I've been saying this all week with both guys. Starting with Mahomes. This is a guy who's playing a defense that has done nothing but dominate quarterbacks. Like, the Texans defense, people need to listen to this. Listen up. The Texans defense all year in 2025 has not given up a top 12 performance from any quarterback in any week this year. Let that sink in. That defense is dominant. So you cannot look at that. You cannot look at this as a plus matchup. And Mahomes has had some lower floor games. Yes, Mahomes' ceiling is awesome. But I make the same argument that Burrow's is awesome too. Because if you look at the Bengals, they haven't had as much success running the ball. So they're already a more pass-driven team. Then you factor in, the weather sucks today. But Burrow has played in this weather not only just this year or last year. He's played in it his entire career as a Cincinnati Bengals player, and he played in it when he was young too. Like, this is nothing new for Joe Burrow to deal with snow. So I personally think Burrow is not only the better floor play today, I think he's a better, way higher ceiling play than Mahomes. So I'm playing Burrow. Brenton Strange or Colston Loveland. Loveland does move up because of the Rome Odunze status, but I will say this. I do trust Brenton Strange more than Loveland because there is still that Cole Kmet aspect of Chicago's offense, and I've always said this. With tight ends, if you're not getting 100% of the snap share, of the volume at the position, it's harder for me to play you over someone who does, right? Like, so Brenton Strange has immediately come back from injury and been their number one guy at the tight end position. It's not close. I like the matchup today a lot better as well. I'll go with Brenton Strange. But just to be clear, Loveland is not a bad play today. Flex Justin Jefferson, RJ Harvey, or Terry. I'll go ahead and bench Justin Jefferson because I'd play both RJ and Terry above him. Comes down to Terry and RJ. My thing with Terry today is that I think he's a really high upside play. And I think his floor is really stable as well, because if you look at his efficiency, like, Terry has done very well on a per opportunity perspective this year. Terry McLaurin, 35 targets, 20 catches, 299 yards. That's about 15 yards per reception. He's had a long of 56 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, that's really good numbers from Terry McLaurin. He's getting a touchdown every 10th reception. And you factor in that he's got Jaden back in the lineup. He's playing a defense that, yes, they shut down JSN, but at the same time, Terry is playing a defense that cannot the dam breaks. And so RJ Harvey, I think, is a really good play as well. I know what the comparison feature is going to say. It's going to say Terry, but I just want to line these two guys up really quick. So let's put them in. Terry McLaurin and RJ Harvey. So Terry is 7 spots ranked above RJ Harvey. Like I said, I think that they're both really good plays. They both have good matchups. You know, it's funny because I don't have a problem with my own. Like, I ranked these guys, but I think I'm actually going to go with RJ Harvey. There's just something, this matchup feels right, and the volume has become stabilized to a point where I don't fear a lack of volume being a reason RJ Harvey doesn't have a good day. The only problem with RJ Harvey that I've had is that if you look at his efficiency, it's actually not been great. Like, he has not been the most efficient player, but I think it's getting better. There's more trust building in that offense, and I would say it's a gut call, but my gut is telling me to play RJ Harvey. RJ or Terry are both good plays. I'd bench Justin Jefferson, but I would play either. I'm leaning RJ Harvey, though. And that's going against my rankings this week. So you can make that gut call. That's my 2 cents, but I appreciate the super chat. Bryant Reed, what's going on? Quarterback, Lamar. Chase Brown at running back, Breece Hall. Wide receivers, A.J. Brown, Jacoby Myers, Trey McBride at tight end. Who should I put as flex? T. Higgins, Barkley, Devonta Smith, or Sutton? It's a relatively easy T. Higgins for me. I don't think that I can justify playing Saquon over T. Higgins when I know that T. Higgins has a much higher ceiling. And Saquon's floor is whatever, like 6 to 8 points. Like, Saquon is just not the same player as he was last year. And whether it's the offense, whether it's the offensive line, whether it's Saquon, I don't really care to get into it that deep yet. I'll get deeper into that in the offseason. But as we sit here today, we can all acknowledge it's not working for Saquon. So Saquon is another guy like Justin Jefferson I'm looking to bench if I can afford to. So I'm going to bench Saquon. Devonta Smith is the closest to T in my opinion, but his instability as far as floor is what drives me away from him. With T, like, I would say his floor this week is like 10 points. Honestly, like, the Bills matchup, I have a lot of confidence in this one. I think it's going to be, in my opinion, this Bills and Bengals game is going to be the game of the week. I really do think so. I think both offenses are going to look awesome, and it's going to be in the snow. So I'll personally play T. Higgins over Devonta Smith and Sutton, who I just don't trust the floor on as well. Appreciate the super chat. Noli moly, what's going on? My wide receiver 2 options suck. Emeka Egbuka, Godwin, or Jaden Reed. I wouldn't say they suck. That's not a terrible combo right there. My opinion on Jaden Reed is I'd rather wait and see a week. Jaden Reed is not far outside of my top 30 wide receivers this week. I do think that he will get work in his first game back, but it's probably not going to be to the extent of what it will be in 2 weeks from now. Like, I think 2 weeks from now, if Jaden Reed's healthy, Jaden Reed will become a guy who's getting like 6 or 7 targets a game. And also, Jaden's never been a high, like, volume guy either. He's always been kind of just really efficient with his work. So I don't think that he'll get enough work today to be able to shake off the rust and still provide you a really good fantasy outing. So I'll bench Jaden. I've seen a lot of people discuss this. I actually think we've got some polls on the site running about Emeka Egbuka versus Godwin. And some people like Godwin. My opinion on it is simple. Egbuka is still getting anywhere between 7 to 11 targets per game. Now, he hasn't been good with the work, but the bottom line is the volume is still there. So, it just doesn't, it's not there enough with Godwin yet for me to just go ahead and rank him after 1 week over Egbuka, because Egbuka has done well all year as their wide receiver one. I'm not at the position yet where I can confidently say Godwin is going to get ranked over Egbuka. So I'll personally play Emeka Egbuka. Appreciate the super chat. Michael Merowitz, good to see you in here. Neil, Corum, Chris Rodriguez, K9 or Burden, Daniels or Darnold. Daniels or Darnold is a really good question. I would personally play Daniels because with Darnold, like, Darnold's ceiling just hasn't been that good this year. I think it's been around like 22 to 23 points, which is solid, but it's very rarely hit. Like, a ceiling is one thing, but it really comes to how often are you able to hit the ceiling. And Darnold hasn't been able to do it very much. So, even in plus matchups, right? Like, Darnold against the Vikings last week, 5 points. Like, that's a crushing week. Against the Titans in a plus matchup, 17 points, which isn't bad, but it's still not a 20-point game, right? Like, Darnold has had too many bad performances that can crush you that it doesn't feel like a good play ever. And with Jaden, like, Jaden's floor, I would say, is probably around, like, 13 to 14 points, and I think his upside in this matchup versus Minnesota is probably 22 plus. So Jaden to me immediately is a better option than Darnold. Kenneth or Burden? You know, it's funny. I think I answered this exact question earlier, and as time has gone on, I'm leaning more towards Burden, actually, and I know I answered Kenneth over Burden at one point. I think what it comes down to for me is that I think his upside is higher than Kenneth's. And that's like something I'm kind of resting on now, is that their floors are close enough for me, I think, to justify making a ceiling leap towards Luther. Because Luther, I think his ceiling is 25 today. I don't think that Kenneth has a 20-point ceiling. Like, I think Kenneth's ceiling has been what it's been all year, because they're not going to change what they're doing. Like, it's working for Seattle. So they're going to continue to utilize this split backfield, right? So, like, that's just going to be the case. And I think for me personally, the ceiling is like 16 to 18 points, and the floor is what's a little safer. But without Rome, I think that Luther's floor is probably around like 6 to 8 points as well. So I think it's close enough of a floor for me to take the shot and justify a ceiling play over Kenneth, who I think is more of a floor play. So I think if it was me, I'd be playing Luther Burden. Neil, Corum, or Chris Rodriguez? I am going to go ahead and lean with Devin Neal because he got enough volume last week for me to give him another shot. Typically, I am not big on like running backs and bad offenses, but when he got given pretty much everything in this offense, like 17 opportunities, right? If he gets that same level of volume today, which pretty much everything would indicate he will. Against the Bucs defense, I'll take that opportunity again over Rodriguez, who is in a split backfield, and if he doesn't get in the end zone, he's going to give you 4 points. And with Corum, if he doesn't get in the end zone, he could give you 2 points. I think Neal's floor is probably around 6 to 7 points, and I would say his upside could be higher this week than 15 points if he gets in the end zone. So I'll go ahead and play Devin Neal. Appreciate the super chat, Michael. Good to see you in here as always. Okay, next up, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel while I'm getting to this next question. Andrew Myers, good to see you in here. T. Higgins or Emeka Egbuka, full PPR. Yeah, to me it's a pretty easy T. I've been I wouldn't say it's on the level of Justin Jefferson and Saquon because it hasn't been as bad for as long, but I've been looking to bench Egbuka if I can, and I feel like I can in this matchup. So for me personally, I look at T. Higgins as a guy who could give you 30 points today. I really do. Egbuka, I always think that 25-point ceiling is a possibility, but it hasn't been hit in what feels like a long time. And I don't trust the direction of where it's going. Again, whether it's him and his injury, whether it's Baker and his injury, I don't know. I haven't dove into it super analytically like that yet, but I do know something's not working. So with T, I'd rather just play him because I think his ceiling is really high, and I actually think his floor is also better as well. Appreciate the super chat. Richard Ellis, what is going on, my friend? Brissett or Jaden Daniels full PPR? That's a really interesting one too. I think I'm going to have to go ahead and lean with Jacoby Brissett. So my wife is actually dealing with the same thing. She's had Jaden Daniels all year, and I've told her just keep holding on to him. He's got the rushing upside. He's a good upside quarterback when he's back. And so he's back this week, and she's like, what do we do? And I was like, honestly, I think I'm just going to continue to ride it with Brissett. Because here's the thing. We're at such a critical point in the fantasy season that if you lose today, it could cost you. I don't know your specific position, right? But if you lose today, it could cost you. And I think that from a safety perspective, I'm always going to play upside. But the thing with Jaden is that I don't think he has 30-point upside right now. I don't think that. Until I see something different, I'll think that his upside is relatively similar to Brissett's around 23 points. And Brissett has become such a stable floor play. So I think that Brissett is the better option. Because if you factor in floor and ceiling combo, I think Jaden's floor is lower. And I would say that Brissett's floor is so stable at this point, regardless of who he plays, that I'm going to go ahead and ride with him again. So maybe next week I'll play Jaden over Brissett, but this week, first week back, I'll play Brissett. Appreciate the super chat. Yo the one, what's going on? Thank you for the generous super chat. 10 team PPR. Need one running back. Marks Neal Rodriguez. Need a tight end, Pitts, Waller, or Andrews. And the other league, need one flex between McConkey, Flowers, Aaron Jones, McLaurin, and Vidal. And you need a quarterback, Burrow, Daniels, or Brissett. So the running backs here in the first league, Marks Neal Rodriguez. Here's my thing. Rodriguez, I'll put him on the bench. Like I said, split backfield. And he doesn't have the upside of a guy like Woody, who you could argue with me is in a split backfield. Woody's got a 20-point ceiling. Now, the other factor to this is that Devin Neal, like I said, I actually think is a really safe play today. I don't think that Devin Neal is going to get you worse than 6 to 8 points. That being said, you have to factor in how bad the offense is. And with Houston, Woody Marks has not done it. He has not done very well in recent weeks. It has not gone particularly well, especially with Woody Marks ceding volume to Nick Chubb. But Woody still is the majority of the time, the running back won. So I think from a ceiling perspective, Woody's is a little higher, but I will say their floors are relatively similar where they're around like 6 to 8 points. You could go with a gut call here because the one thing I will say Neal has over Woody is I think Neal's workload is going to be more trustworthy. So I would personally go ahead and play Woody because I'm an upside guy, but I don't have a problem with you playing Woody or playing Devin Neal. It's close enough to where you could justify it to me, but I'm going Woody. Tight end Pitts, Waller, Andrews. I'm going to go ahead and personally play Waller out of the bunch because once again, Pitts, his target share on a weekly basis is so unpredictable, and the upside of him from a per touch perspective is not there. He hasn't been a red zone threat much at all. He's got 1 touchdown this year. And then when you go with Andrews, I think the volume is going to be similar enough to where it is with Waller that I would rather take the guy who's been more of a consistent downfield weapon for his team, which has been Waller. So I'll play Waller. One flex in the other league, McConkey, Zay, Aaron Jones, Terry McLaurin. I'm going to go with Terry because Ladd is my second option. And they're close enough to where you could gut call this one. But my opinion is that Terry's upside is 25 points with Jaden back and in the matchup versus Minnesota. Now, Ladd, I think, has a 20-point ceiling and maybe a little bit of a more stable floor. So once again, it's a gut call, but I would rather take the upside with Terry. Having Jaden back, Deebo Samuel as a weapon who kind of takes away a little bit from Terry's attention. So I would personally play Terry. And then quarterback Burrow, Daniels, or Brissett. I'm going Burrow. Like I said, my thing with Burrow is that I've seen a lot of people ask about the weather today. This guy is taking on a Bills defense, which has been bad. And Burrow is in position to where he's played in these weather games his whole life. Not just his whole NFL career, his whole life. And he's done nothing but prove he can do it. So it's a must-win game for Cincinnati. They still have a shot at the division. I'm going with Joe Burrow. I think his upside is higher than both those guys. Appreciate the super chat, man. Zach Keese, appreciate you and your generous super chat. Just signing may have answered already. Neal or Vele for flex, Fannin or Waller for tight end, Boswell or Lutz for kicker. So Boswell and Lutz, I'm going to go with Boswell personally. I know Boz has had a rough stretch here, but I do think of this Ravens matchup is usually a field goal deciding game. And Boswell is just a better kicker than Will Lutz. Like, Will Lutz's range isn't that great. And so I also view the Denver offense as like very inconsistent too. And you just look at Lutz and you look at Boswell and their seasons that they've been having. Boswell is clearly by far the better fantasy kicker. Like, he's got a much higher ceiling than Lutz. And I think they both have a lower floor at this point, but I'll go with Boswell. Fannin or Waller for tight end. I'll go Waller once again because I like the upside of the touchdown. Fannin, I don't know if he has the touchdown upside with Shedeur Sanders. Maybe he does. But I'll go with Darren Waller in this one because I think that it's just been fun to watch, like, it's just been fun to watch Darren Waller on a per touch basis. Like, he's been so efficient. So Waller to me is a better play. Neal or Vele for flex. If Olave was not playing, I would definitely say Vele. But the fact that Olave is playing 1 week is not enough to sway me over someone who I would say is more consistent of a workload. Like, if Kamara was there, obviously you'd play Vele, but Kamara's out. And so if last week was any indication, 17 touches is sustainable. Whereas with Vele, that's a little bit unsustainable. So I would personally go ahead and play Devin Neal. Appreciate the super chat. All right, we've got a little less than 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to work through as many questions as I can over the next 10 minutes. Christian Bravo, appreciate the super chat. So I'm going to be moving a little faster. Lamar or Lawrence, May on bye, winning them in. Man, it's a crappy position to be in. Lamar has done nothing but kill teams. I can't watch Lamar kill you. I've got to say Lawrence. Lawrence has actually done well from a per-game perspective over the last month. He's got rushing upside, actually better than Lamar's at this point. Lamar's not running the ball. So I really do think that at this point, you cannot look at Lamar as the same level of guy that you could look at him last year, for example. To me, Lamar is a liability, and I can't continue to watch him destroy teams. I've got to go with Lawrence. Appreciate the super chat. Jeremy Cody, good to see you in here. Devin Neal versus Swift versus Aaron Jones. Swift is going to be in my lineup. The Bears' running game is so dominant. They've got to run first offensive-minded head coach. And yes, the matchup is tough, but I'll take the higher upside offense over two offenses that I cannot not only trust, but you can actually trust them to not be good. Aaron Jones injured. Risk of re-injury is high. Devin Neal is just not on a good enough team. I'll go with DeAndre Swift. Appreciate the super chat. Next up, we had Daniels, AFK, BRB. Appreciate the super chat. Kincaid in the snow or Strange. If it's me, I'm going Kincaid. I don't care about snow. Josh Allen's a strong arm quarterback. He can throw through the snow. He's got no other reliable receiving option. I think Kincaid's a higher upside play. Brenton Strange is fine if you're in position to where you're really worried about the weather, then fine, because Brenton Strange and him probably get around the same level of targets. Maybe they both get 4 to 6 targets in this game, but I would personally rather play the higher upside offensive player, which is, to me, Dalton Kincaid. They're close enough to where you could rank them. They're close enough to where you could put Brenton Strange over him if you really worry about the weather. Appreciate the super chat. Eric Muniz, what's going on? Need a lot of help to keep number 1 seed. Who do I start? Lamar Jackson, Tyrod. Tight end, Brenton Strange or Barner. Flex, Watson or Godwin. Defense, Browns, Broncos. Much appreciated and love the content. Have a great day. You as well. Browns and Broncos are both great defenses. The way I view it is that the Broncos are the better play because the Raiders have no offensive line. They've got a tremendous pass rush, and I don't see a world where the Raiders put up more than 10 points today. Now, same thing goes with the Browns versus Tennessee. They're both excellent plays. I would say that when I look at it from a year-long perspective, the Broncos have been a higher upside defensive play than the Browns have been. I think that the reality with this situation is that you have so many games where you could just look at both of these two teams, and the Broncos have just been a higher performing defense. So if they both have great matchups, give me the better performing defense on the year, which is the Broncos. Jackson versus Tyrod. Once again, it's so hard for me to continue to see Lamar Jackson crush people. And Tyrod, last week wasn't bad. Now, this may be at a point where I can't justify playing a different quarterback over Lamar because Tyrod last week, yes, against the Falcons was good. That was also at home. I could see a world where he actually does better, but I'm not going to – I don't think I'm ready to do that. I think for me personally, Lamar makes sense. He's got a really good matchup as well versus the Steelers. So I do think that Lamar, to me, is going to be the better play. Strange versus Barner. I would go with Strange. He's just a better bet to get him. He's a better bet to get 5 targets than Barner is. Barner to me is not a safe play whatsoever. He's got a decent ceiling, but I've got Strange. Watson versus Godwin. I'd go Watson because I do think that Watson is just a better bet on a weekly basis than Godwin. Godwin just needs to prove it to me first that he can replicate what he did last week, and then he also has to do more because Watson just has a higher ceiling as of right now. Appreciate the super chat. Okay. We've got a couple more super chats to get through. Woodchucks Fantasy Football, good to see you. Need to outscore top team by 43 points to get number 1 seed. Egbuka, BTJ, and McLaurin, which two have the highest ceiling and no PPR? Also have Lawrence. I would say Terry's got the highest ceiling of the bunch because he's been the better player than all those guys over the last several weeks. So he's got to go in. And Egbuka, I would say, has a higher ceiling because if you just look at BTJ this year, it hasn't been good. I can't realistically, in my right mind, tell anyone to play BTJ over Egbuka when he's looked like that. Like, him and Trevor Lawrence just do not have the chemistry. So I get it. Like, you want to play the stack upside. It makes sense to me in one perspective, but on the other perspective, it doesn't make enough sense because he just hasn't been good. So I'll personally go ahead and play Egbuka and Terry. Appreciate the super chat. Fam first, what's going on? Waddle or McLaurin, Marks or Monungai? I will personally play McLaurin over Waddle. I think he's got a safer floor and just as high of a ceiling. Marks or Monungai? I'll go with Kyle Monungai. I think Kyle Monungai is a really good play. Like, he is a high upside flex every single week. He's been too involved in this offense. Appreciate the super chat. Oddwallerman, what's going on? Start Brenton Strange, Zay Flowers, or Woody Marks in the flex. 0.25 PPR with 100 plus yards bonus points. I think that Woody is hard pressed to get 100 yards. Same with Zay. I actually think that Brenton Strange is the better bet to get 100 yards. I think Brenton Strange could get 100 in the matchup versus Indy's defense, which is weaker. And I think he's just a more consistent target. So Woody has struggled with efficiency. Zay has struggled with just a consistent target share. I think Brenton Strange is the better play. That's what I would do. Appreciate the super chat. And then we've got one more super chat. Brandon Fresca, what's going on? Flex Adonai Mitchell or Woody Marks? I personally would go ahead and play Woody Marks, but that's just me. I think from a volume perspective, he's more reliable, but I would say that Adonai Mitchell probably has a little bit of a higher ceiling, but I think his floor is like 2 points. I don't think Woody's floor is that low. I think Woody's floor is about 6 to 8 points with a ceiling of like 16 to 17. So I would go with Woody if it was me personally, but I could see playing Adonai Mitchell. Appreciate the super chat. All right. I appreciate everyone being in here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel on your way out, and let's go win our matchups today. It's a big week. Let's go win some playoff games, clinch some spots, and have a good time watching today. Love you guys, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.